No one's gonna tune in, I bet. Um, I have a video on my other channel premiering in like, I don't know, a half hour. So I don't know how long I'm gonna be here because I don't know if anybody's even gonna tune in. And if nobody tunes in for a while, I might overlap my live streams. Let me see. I don't know how long I'm gonna be here because I don't know. Does that work? Okay, good. The link in the description works. So if you guys want to go to my other channel, you can. But I missed my live stream on Sunday. I was dead asleep. Um, oh, it says I have 2 people tuned in. That's cool. Um, I wonder if I should let, in a group chat, I wonder if I should let them know I'm live. I didn't let anybody know I was doing this. I just kind of did it. Because I was talking to myself and I said, fuck this, I don't want to talk to myself. I want to talk to my YouTube channel. And, because I got stuff to say. I was just thinking about, like, politics and world events and just a couple different things. It's always specific things that are on my mind, and then it always branches off into, like, a million different conversations, and I could go on for, like, 6 hours if you let me, I'm sure. But I don't have time for that. I have a day, so I will just be talking and sharing my thoughts for, let's just say, a half hour. That seems reasonable. I will consider this making up for the live stream I missed on Sunday, and whether I have anybody here or not, I think I'm just gonna talk and then just sort of treat this like a video, I guess. Um, so, and I might try out that highlights feature again if I think of anything interesting that I've said that I want to share in the span of 5 minutes. Um, okay, so what do I want to start with? Gosh, well, the other day, I guess I'll just start with the less heavy topic, kind of a lighter topic that I've just got some thoughts I'd like to share. Um, okay, so my aunt came over the other day. She works at a Wegmans, which is a big chain grocery store, and she came over and she just was talking with me and my family about a bunch of different things, and then she mentioned pronouns, and I thought, what do you mean, like, is this something that's happened at work? And she's like, well, I've had I've had some that they have to put them on name tags and stuff, and it's just she told some stories about things that were happening at work, and it was just really interesting to have a discussion about this with a bunch of people who are completely foreign to the whole thing, because when I'm by myself, I'm in my own world. I've got my friends, I've got my boyfriend. I have like a whole other world that I'm immersed in, and I sometimes forget how foreign this is to a lot of other people. How it's like it's not even that they're angrily and passionately against it. It's not that they're like, "Oh, what is all this bullshit?" It's more just that they're like, "Huh?" They're just kind of scratching their heads, sort of like when you look at Gen Z slang and you see some strange terms used. um, I There was a story posted the other day. It's not available anymore. But it was like, do you guys get Gen Z slang? And it gave some examples. And the answers were like, yes, shamefully, no, not at all, and bet. Which I just thought was so funny because if you get it, you get it. Um, I personally, I clicked yes shamefully because I do get it. I can speak it. It's just not something that I really go out of my way to use. I don't use it. I can read it. I'll put it like that. But sometimes I forget that normal people don't talk like that, and I forget that I kind of happen to represent a balance between the two worlds, and I don't even realize that I do because I fit so nicely into both of them. And when they collide, I'm like, oh shit, these really, they're not at all like how I'm used to. Like when I'm in one world, it's one thing. When I'm in the other world, it's another thing. I sometimes forget that they are so different from each other because I'm just always kind of existing between them in a very nonchalant way. I don't call a lot of attention to myself, the way that I dress, the way that I act. I'm just pretty much like I just sit there and bob in the water, and everyone's okay with me. Um, so I don't know if that's intentional. It's certainly not because I'm afraid of anything. It's just because I don't have the energy to be as extra as I want to be, I guess. And I also do like to make sure that people are hearing me. It's not fear as much as it is just strategy. I don't like to tune people out. I don't like to market so specifically toward a specific audience that I block out all these other people who might have actually had something to gain from hearing whatever it was I was saying. So I try to be a little bit neutral just for that reason. And it's not because I'm trying to get more attention or, anything that's coming from a selfish place. It's just because when I get attention, I think people are getting something out of it. A lot of the content that I have on my YouTube channel and just, interactions that I have with other people are usually mutually beneficial. So it's it's just the way that I prefer to be, and I feel like I'm fine. I don't feel like I'm not being myself. I feel like I, if anything, am trying to find a balance for other people to know that you can be yourself, but also not box out other people unnecessarily. Because, like I said, it's not coming from a place of malice or hate. My aunt and my family, that we were all talking to each other, nobody was angry. Nobody was like, "What is all this bullshit? I can't stand this shit. It's everybody's a groomer." No one was talking like that. Everyone was just confused by it, and I think rightfully so. I think a lot of it is pretty fucking confusing. So I didn't get to share all of my thoughts because there were like 4 or 5 people in the room, maybe even 6, and I I was the only one who really had a lot of thoughts on the matter as it was, and I only got to share a little bit of them, so I'll just share the rest of them right now. I was even considering making that the topic for my video that I'm premiering in 23 minutes, but I changed it to a different topic that I got literally at the last minute. I mean, like minutes before recording the video, I got the idea, and it's about cheating. So I felt like that was worth talking about. It was an issue that kept coming up. I had friends break up because of it. I saw a video on the internet about it right before I made it. It was like something that just kept coming up, and I had so many thoughts that I had been wanting to share. So I was like, here we go. Let's just do this. Um, so I didn't do the pronoun thing, and I want to do it still, so I'll just do it in this live stream, and I will try my best to summarize it. So, let's assume that you don't know anything about it. If you already do, that's fine. If you have a strong opinion, you're super in favor of like all queer LGBT stuff that's going on nowadays, or you're super opposed to it, I don't care. Just imagine you don't know anything, because what I'm going to be saying is just sort of my thoughts. And, as I explained it, I do tend to be more neutral about things. So if somebody does join, I might stop what I'm saying and talk to them for a minute, but I'm going to keep focused on the topic. Um, because I don't want to mess anything up. So my thoughts, um, I think that when people talk about pronouns and they want to tell you what their pronouns are, to me that doesn't make sense, because I think that pronouns are supposed to be how you refer to someone when they're not around based on how you perceive them, and I don't think it's that deep. I don't think that it really needs to have that much thought put into it. Truthfully, the whole point of pronouns in the first place are to simplify things, so you don't always have to use someone's name when referring to them. You can just use something shorter, simpler, more to the point. Like you could say, Tristan said this, and then he said that, and then he said this and that, and this and that, and then he did this, and then you wouldn't believe what he said next. If you had to say my name all of those times, it would have taken forever, and it would have sounded very awkward. So pronouns exist for the purpose of simplifying things, and I think we kind of lost sight of that. It turned into something where people are making it a lot more complicated and confusing than it needs to be, and people are like having to stop themselves and say, "Wait, I got to make sure I'm using this person's correct pronouns." So telling someone what your pronouns are in the first place, in my opinion, is not necessary. I think that it's just kind of a weird trend that started, and I want to explain where it came from. Um, I think that it started with the idea that we are more than our bodies. It's kind of an inherently spiritual take, because it suggests the existence of a soul. In my opinion, I don't think that it suggests anything other than that. You could maybe say that it's about the concept of the way people present themselves, because people will say, and if you look at the definition, this is actually true. Gender and sex are different things. Gender is how you dress, how you present yourself, how you act, and that has the concept of what's male and female, what constitutes male and female, has changed over time regarding gender, but sex is biology, so sex is unchanging. So regarding biology, that also can be a little bit iffy. There are, intersex people, hermaphrodites. It's a more well-known term, I think. Intersex is more like the modern version of that, but it's it's when someone is born and they just have kind of a mix of the chromosomes, and they're just both. They're physically male and female, and sometimes it's like more so one than the other. Like they're a woman, but there's a penis there, or they're a man, but there's like a lack of a penis, or there's boobs or something like that. You know what I mean? Or there's like a higher voice or it's not totally one or the other. And I think that just shows how messy but the biology aspect of it is in the first place. It's really not that deep. That is really the main message that I want to stress regarding all of this, is that it's not that deep, it's not that serious, and it doesn't need to cause this much distress in this many people's lives. Um, I think it's something that people are putting far too much thought into, in my opinion. I know I keep saying that, but I just want to be very clear. This is not me just telling you what it is. This is me telling you what I think. Um, and I think that regarding the gender aspect of it, how you present yourself. There was once a time when wearing makeup and dresses and wigs was considered more masculine than feminine, and depending on where you live, depending on the culture. So that I understand that does change over time. But again, even the people who are making that argument and saying that there's a difference between gender and sex, they don't seem to know where that line is drawn. And they just keep going on about they'll go on and on about things that don't even make sense. And what I mean by that is, I keep seeing people tune in and out. Like it'll say that there's one person watching, and then I'll go down to zero. I don't understand who does that. Who just clicks on a live stream and then just leaves? Rude. If you don't want to watch, don't watch. Come on, man. Anyway, um, people don't seem to understand where that line is drawn, because they will say that, but then they'll be acting as if a transgender woman or man should be thought of as a cisgender woman or man. It's like they don't want there to be a distinction. I hear it over and over again. Trans women are women, trans men are men. No, trans women are trans women, trans men are trans men. It is a biological male who transitioned into a female, and it's a biological female who transitioned into a male. That's what it is. And there's no reason to pretend otherwise. You cannot deny the reality that your biology plays a big role in the experience you have in your life. And the experience of a transgender woman is completely different from the experience of a cisgender woman. There's just no denying that. You cannot make a comparison, and they shouldn't be put into the same category. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they should be put into the category of males, because there's also no denying that a transgender woman's experience is completely different from a cisgender male's experience. So it needs its own category because it is a unique experience, and that's okay. You're allowed to make room for people and make new categories. You don't always have to cram everybody into a space, because there just keeps being this big debate of, well, do I belong in the men's team or the women's team, or the men's bathroom or the women's bathroom? Just figure it out. It's first of all, it's not that deep. It really doesn't matter where you go. People shouldn't care that much. These decisions, especially on sports, should just be based on physical attributes, like what are you capable of? What will be the most fair? And that's all that should be considered. What's between your legs is irrelevant. It's just a matter of what you're capable of regarding that sport. As for bathrooms, I really don't think bathrooms have a reason to be gendered in the first place. I've always thought that was odd. Um, but, I guess for that, I would just say whatever you're more comfortable with. Um, there really is no evidence of like an increase in violent, like sex violence in bathrooms because of this. Like, I cannot imagine someone who has the intention of being sexually violent or perverted saying, "Oh, you know what? I was gonna go in the women's bathroom and rape a woman, but there's a sign that says I'm not supposed to, so I guess I can't. Like, come on. Are these people even thinking? The people who make these arguments, they say that there's evidence, and it's like, yeah, well, there's also evidence of it happening with cisgender people. You know, you're just singling out the trans people because you have a point that you want to make. It's called confirmation bias. It's like selective hearing, you know? You will notice only the things that affirm your stance and ignore everything else that suggests otherwise. It's ridiculous. And it's the only thing you're really accomplishing is stigmatizing an already stigmatized group who is constantly getting attacked and harassed and treated like they don't deserve to exist. So chill out, okay? It's not that big of a deal. People are not coming after your children. People are not trying to get your children. Everything you've seen in favor of that, I promise you, is just bullshit. You may think you know otherwise, but I can 100% guarantee you that there is far more evidence of people who are not part of the queer community being predatory against children. Queer people are just as likely to be predators as anybody else. Anybody can be. And I know plenty of queer people who are absolutely anything but a child predator. Like me, for example, I don't even like children. I don't like being around them. I think they're annoying and ugly, and usually they smell bad. But that's just my opinion. I would like my own kid if I had a kid, but only because I knew, you know, everything about the kid. What I don't like is that kids are often a reflection of their parents, and parents usually don't know what they're doing, which is why all these kids are typically so disgusting. It's because parents are just very bad at their jobs, which is a whole separate topic. But um, nevertheless, um, you don't need to worry about um, if you're taking care of your kids. I'm not here to tell you that you're being a bad parent, but I'm sure you can at least acknowledge you've seen plenty of bad parents. That seems to be the one thing everyone can agree upon, except they never think it's them. But it couldn't hurt to reflect. Ask yourself if it's you, and I'm not going to tell you whether or not I agree. I don't know who you are, so yeah, don't get offended. People are so ready to be offended these days. I had someone yell at me the other day, not yell at me, but try to make a thing out of something that did not need to be a thing. Um, I there was someone that was brought up to me as a drag queen, which is someone who dresses up like the opposite sex, and at least I think that's what it is. Um, and I guess that could also, maybe in older terminology that's no longer used. You never hear transsexual or transvestite anymore. It's pretty much transgender and not transgender and drag queen is pretty much. I think a transvestite is a drag queen now, and transsexual is just transgender now. I'm pretty sure that's kind of what has become the terminology. Those terms are just not used anymore. I feel like it almost sounds derogatory to think of them, and I don't know when that change occurred, but um, maybe just because it was used in derogatory ways in the past. But either way, people just abbreviate and just say trans now. So there are plenty of people who dress up in drag, and there was this person who was brought up who's a drag queen, I think, and I was like, "Oh, okay. So, who is he?" And then the other person kept referring to her as a she. And I was like, "Wait a minute, is this a drag queen or a trans girl?" And I couldn't tell. So, I just said, "Wait a minute, is it a he or a she?" And I thought that was just a perfectly logical way of wording it. Is it a he or a she? Because I was stepping back from the situation and thinking about the person we were referring to. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is it?" And I would have said that about anything. If you had said to me, I want you to meet my friend, he's an actor, I would have said, well, is it a good actor or a bad actor? Or something like that. I don't know. And I could have just as easily said that. And I don't think anybody, um, if you hadn't used he, let's say that. If you just said, I want you to meet my actor friend, I would have said, is it a good actor or a bad actor? Because that's just the way that my mind works, and I don't think anybody would have cared if I had said it in that context. No one would have jumped on it. However, just because it was in the context of asking about someone's pronouns, someone felt the need to tell me that I should have said, what are their pronouns, instead of, is it a he or a she? They didn't think to ask what my opinions are on the matter, because that's what bothers me. It's supposed to just be You have to think this way, you have to feel this way. I'm not allowed to disagree or have my own opinions. That's what bothers me, because I do think it's a matter of opinion, and I do think that there is a conversation to be had here. I don't think it's as simple as an issue of morality. You're going to do this or you're not going to do this. I've spent so much time on this, I might not go into the other topic because it is a little bit heavier. I might touch on it briefly at the end. We'll see. But I've got 10 minutes left before my video starts premiering, and I don't want to overlap them. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't think that you should ever dismiss a discussion. I think things deserve to be talked about and disputed and agreed upon. You shouldn't just have this be the consensus because somebody said so. That's the same logic that led us to be homophobic in the first place. Was, well, God said so, and nobody said, but why? What are these people doing? Are they hurting people? Are they dangerous? And there's zero evidence of that. So I would say, you know what? Until it makes sense to me, I'm not going to worry about it. I think gay people are totally harmless. So therefore, either God is wrong or God needs to explain himself better. And no matter how many centuries have passed, no matter how much we've talked about this and tried to figure it out, no one can come up with an actual convincing logical reason why homosexuality is wrong or unnatural or dangerous. It doesn't hurt anybody. It literally is natural because it's observed in nature. Tons of other animal species. I think just recently there was like whales or something. I don't know, but that is like there's always homosexual activity among other animals. So it's natural as far as anything is. It's not harmful or dangerous because it doesn't hurt anybody. It's not like pedophilia or rape. It's not like being a serial killer. It's not comparable to other offenses in religion. And yet it's thrown in there for some reason. And I can think of a few political reasons. I can think of a few reasons why someone might benefit from saying that. And I can also think of a few fear based and ignorant reasons. However, I can't think of any logical reasons. So I'm not just going to take God's word for it. I don't take anybody's word for it because I personally don't think that there is such a thing as an authority so high it overrides logic. If someone is really telling you, do this because I said so, and they can't make it make sense, give that person the finger and do whatever you want. Because that is not right. That's fucking tyranny. It's unacceptable. And that's what we're trying to avoid all the time. And we have to realize sometimes we go too far in the opposite direction. We try so hard to oppose, uh, you know, a thought proposed in a very, like, from an authority figure, like God saying homosexuality is wrong. We go so far in the opposite direction, we end up doing the same thing from the other side, telling people that things are a certain way and not giving any room for discussion. We have to have room for discussion. That doesn't mean let's let's try to indulge ridiculous thoughts. You know, if someone wants to prove that unicorns are real, it's like, give that 5 minutes, but be reasonable. We have to have some type of boundary for what constitutes a productive conversation regarding a topic, because there are so many non-productive arguments, non-arguments, things that have no basis in anything practical or useful. It's just like, well, one time my grandma said this, therefore, I don't know, like, it's not practical at all. And we need, if we're going to have arguments about this, we need to be practical. We need to know how to actually have a productive conversation. So, we could establish rules and then actually open up discussion to things like this so that things are actually allowed to go somewhere instead of just people who disagree with a fact going nowhere, or people who disagree with something that should never have been there in the first place, not having the ability to dispute it. So we need to find a balance. And I don't like that I was kind of dismissed in that way, where I said something that I didn't think was a big deal. And I stand by that. I don't think there's anything wrong with the way I worded that. Because I have my own opinions on the whole they them pronoun thing, and I want to touch on that before I end the live stream. So I'll just share my thoughts real quick on that. And I will actually do it quickly because I want to be done in 5 minutes. So I think that the concept of being non-binary is rooted in the idea that we are more than our bodies, right? It sort of suggests that your body can be one thing, but you are something else. It's the same thing with being trans, is that you don't feel like you're matching what's going on in your body, and there may be some physical measurable thing there, um, but to me it feels very spiritual, and I don't think people even need to worry about the whole gender versus sex argument. I think that just needs to be thrown out completely because it's very confusing, and like I said, people can't seem to nobody can agree on where the line is drawn. So it's very messy, and I would just say think of it like this. You know what I'll do? I'll explain my understanding of it, and then I'll explain the difference between my understanding of it and how other people have kind of taken it and run away with it. So, my understanding of being transgender and being non-binary is pretty simple. It's just that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we've had many bodies before this, not all human, not all even on this planet. Um, and we, at our core, are just sort of like light orbs. Um, Sex, gender, male, female, I believe that those are everywhere. They're in the universe. You see it in everything. It's this sort of like a yin yang, this male and female energy. It exists in everything. Everything can be measured on kind of a scale of like, oh, that's more masculine, more feminine. You can just feel it in energies. You can feel it everywhere. And again, this is speaking in terms of spirituality. This is my understanding of it. So I think that there are some people who just come to Earth, and maybe they actually picked this as part of their journey and getting people to be more open and understanding, just feeling completely different from their body. Their biology, their body is one thing, but spiritually they feel like they are something completely different. And that's okay. You really are different, even if you do kind of feel like you're very feminine and you have a female body, that doesn't even necessarily mean that that will always be the case. You may someday find yourself, I think everybody by that logic is, in terms of infinity, gender fluid. We're constantly just going around from one to the other, and it's just a question of what are you now? And for a lot of people, by coincidence, it lines up with their biology. But, when you reincarnate, you may have a different gender, you may have a different race, you may have different all sorts of things, because none of it is really you. It's so I think that what we need to do is we need to understand that it's okay to feel like you are different from the way that your body is, and that you can change. If you can change when you reincarnate, you might as well change in this life. And I'm not saying you can be transracial. I think that cultural appropriation is something that you really don't want to touch for a lot of reasons, because that's something that you have to acknowledge there's an element of disrespect there, and that's not something that would ever be supported in spirituality, supported by the universe. You don't ever want to be disrespectful or tasteless. Um, and so just use your common sense. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. I don't want to get into the details of that, but just like, listen to your gut. It doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, which is where a lot of my thoughts on this come from, is just based on what feels a certain way. Because I don't take anything at face value. I don't take anybody's word for anything. I always test how I actually feel about it. And sometimes how I feel doesn't line up with the popular narrative, and I'm okay with that, as long as I can explain it in a way that makes sense. So, um, regarding gender, I think if you want to get surgery, that's fine. It's your body. You can do what you want. You want to start presenting as the opposite sex, you want to tell people that you are the opposite sex, I would be careful about that, because you can just say that you're trans. You can just say, yeah, I'm a trans woman, or I'm a trans man. You don't have to say I am a man or I am a woman, because that might confuse people. They might not know. They might just think that you're like a strange looking female or a strange looking male, and it would make so much more sense to them if they knew that you were trans. And I get that there is the fear of being judged for it, the fear of being attacked. If you really are afraid of that, that's fine. I get not being honest in all situations, but you want to be honest in most situations when you do feel safe. So don't don't use that as an excuse. It's okay to be honest. Most of the time you are safe. There are some situations, this is true for everyone, where there's a hostile presence in front of you, and you just feel like if you say the wrong thing, that person could just flip out on you and you might not be safe. But I think it's just a matter of what you want to share about yourself. But I think you have to acknowledge when you're trans, people are going to notice for the most part, especially if you haven't physically transitioned yet. People are going to notice, and they're going to not know how to refer to you. They're going to not know what's going on. They might think that you're just in drag. They might think that you're trans. They might not want to offend you. Um, but at the same time, they're going to have to acknowledge your existence and refer to you, and they might end up referring to you in kind of a derogatory way while trying to be sensitive. Like, that person over there, or, like, because you don't want to say she, that woman, or, if you're not sure. So it's like, just help people out a little bit, is all I'm saying. Trust that people, for the most part, are trying their best to not offend other people. There are people who do, who go out with hatred in their heart and anger. And I think you can see those people coming. You can feel it as soon as they walk into the room. Take it from someone who worked in retail for like 17 months. I know what that feels like. I would not have ever been thrown off by someone being hostile. I could always see it coming a mile away. Okay, so I do have to wrap this up. The last thing that I want to say, because I am now overlapping, I think it's probably still in the premiere intro. Let me check. Nobody's even here anyway, so I don't think it matters. Why do people cheat? Oh, it started. Damn. Wait, does that say one comment? Oh, I got one from Cheryl on the Why Do People Cheat video. Cool. Okay. So anyway, I'll wrap up my thoughts and then I'll end this so you guys can go watch that, if anybody here wants to, if it even matters. Okay, so I think that when it comes to being non-binary, you're basically saying that you feel pretty balanced between masculine and feminine energies internally, regardless of what you are externally. Maybe you're completely male, maybe you're completely female, you're not intersex, and yet internally you don't feel like you align with that. You feel kind of like you're not male, you're not female, you're just kind of a balance of both. Or, no, you have to be both. I don't think there is such a thing as neither, because everything, and comes with masculine and feminine. I guess it depends on how you define it, because like I said, some people have different opinions of what masculine and feminine means, but I think that there is an objective masculine and feminine, and I think that that's always kind of there. So that's a whole other concept, but again, this is my understanding of it. I think that if you are going to go that route and say that you are both masculine and feminine, all you really need to do in that case is just change how you present yourself and then call it a day. You don't have to tell people to refer to you as they, them. As I mentioned at the beginning when I brought this topic up, people are going to refer to you based on how they see you, how they perceive you. And you might as well just shrug it off. Like, it really doesn't matter, because you're really going out of your way at that point to confuse people if you start with the they them shit. If you want people to use they them pronouns, maybe try to confuse them. Maybe be completely, androgynous in the way you present yourself, where they genuinely cannot figure you out. They look and they're like, that's what you're going for. But most of the time, the majority of non-binary people that I see who use they them pronouns are like clearly female or clearly male, and my brain just does not want to refer to them neutrally. I only want to refer to people neutrally when they're an unknown person. When someone's like, "Oh, my friend said this," and you're like, "Oh, what'd they say?" Because you don't know who you're talking about yet. But when you do, and you still keep using they them, it just feels wrong. And I feel like, the grammar nerd in me is just very irritated by that. But I've heard people say that it is grammatically correct, and even use that as an argument and say that sometimes you could use it when referring to an unknown person. I'm like, yeah, it's a minimal situation. How often do you do that? There's a reason that it's not done often, because it's very confusing and very hard to keep up with when doing it often. And I don't think it's an offense. I don't think that anybody should consider that insulting or offensive. I think they're the ones making a big deal out of it. You ha- this is when it bleeds into not acknowledging reality, because you're probably not actually a hermaphrodite, you're probably not actually intersex. You probably are not actually, um, presenting yourself as completely androgynous either. And yet, you feel dysphoric when someone doesn't use your preferred neutral pronouns. I don't understand that. Like, if you are presenting yourself as a female and you're biologically female, how is that making you feel dysphoric? It almost just feels like you're going out of your way to invent problems that don't exist. And I don't know what the motive could be for that. To me, it just looks like people trying really hard to figure themselves out, trying really hard to make sense of things, and all of these new concepts that really aren't new. I mean, we've been doing this for thousands of years. All of this gender stuff. It's just that we have different language for it. We have different ways of thinking of it, but it's the same stuff that's always been going on, especially in indigenous older cultures where we just kind of had a more spirit. We were just more in tune spiritually, and none of this stuff was a big deal. Nobody had to get offended. It just kind of is what it is. And I think we really need to take a couple steps back and acknowledge how much of this has just become trendy and not really logical anymore. Um, so yeah, those are my thoughts. I did go on for an extra 6 minutes longer than I planned to, but hey, it's me. What do you expect? Um, so anyway, thank you for tuning in. I don't think anybody did. I got 0 comments that I saw this whole time. Yeah, no comments. So thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed watching the replay since you didn't tune in live, but I can't blame you. This wasn't at my normal time. This was in the middle of the day. It was unannounced. It just unscheduled. It just happened. So whatever. Hopefully my thoughts were interesting. I'm sorry I didn't bring up the other topic that I was planning on, but this just turned into a whole thing and I couldn't stop. Like verbal diarrhea, just like running at the mouth. I can't ever stop myself. um, so yeah, my other video, I'll put the link in the description, is already there, and my other